In modern Beersheba, this is about 5 miles to the north. And we see there in chapter 18, beginning with verse 1, Yahweh appeared to him at the oak of Mamre. Now, we are told right away from the onset that Yahweh appeared to him. Now, we're going to see that in the actual apparition, Abraham at first doesn't know it's Yahweh. But it says, Yahweh appeared to him at the oak of Mamre while he was sitting by the entrance of the tent during the hottest part of the day. And what was going on here, as is the case not only in Israel, but in the hottest part of the day in Israel and other places around the world, they started working early in the morning. And they would go to usually around 12, 1 o'clock, stop working. And then they would take what is known in Hebrew as a siesta. And they would take the siesta for a good 3-4 hours. And then when usually about 4, 5, 6, depending on what was to be done, they'd come back to work. Abraham was a sheep herder. So he would be with the sheep in the morning, lead them to water and do all that. And then he'd take his siesta, and then he would work him again in the afternoon. And so he was over here in his siesta. Here he was in the hottest part of the day. He was there in his tent. And the tents are humongous. Some of them could be even this size with different compartments in them. And many of them are made of black wool from the sheep. And you could see them even today. You could go in the Bedouin, you could see the black tents there in the desert. And he was there. It says there that he looked up and he saw 3 men standing near him. And you all know how that is. Especially if you're sleeping, you're taking a siesta, maybe you're out there in your lawn chair, and all of a sudden you're dozing on and off, and it's hot, and sometimes you get that cool little breeze, but you're in that middle time of sleeping, and all of a sudden you look up and he sees 3 men standing before him. He sees 3 men. Now to him they are men, because it says Yahweh appeared, but when he appeared, what does he see? He sees 3 men. And as soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to meet them and bowed to the ground. This is typical Middle Eastern custom of those days. These men must have been dressed in a fashion that would make him look upon them, and then he says to them, Adoni, Adoni, which in our English translation is my Lord. The Hebrew would be my master, Adoni. Now, this is in the singular, Adoni, in the singular, my master. And right away, he says, if I have found favor, do not pass your servant by. A little water will be brought, and that you would wash your feet. He came down under the tree, and he said, fetch some bread and refresh yourselves. So typical Middle Eastern hospitality. Right away, the washing of the feet. When you have guests, when you have honored guests, the honored guests come, and the first thing, get some water, refresh themselves, get some water on their face, get some water, wash their feet. Get a little bread, a little challah, And these that the bread were the flat breads, which we would call today tortillas. Bring some tortillas over, make some. And that's typical Middle Eastern hospitality, which is the hospitality of even some of our recent ancestors. I remember my grandma, when we would have guests, as soon as the guests would come, we would have to give a glass of water. Remember those days? You give them a glass of water, go make some tortillas. Then they'd go to the kitchen, and then, she'd send my mom, and they'd be making tortillas and be, making some food so that the guests could have something to eat. I've been in Middle Eastern homes today, both Jewish and Arab, and they do the same thing. You go visit them, and the first thing they do is they bring you water. They bring, flatbread, pita today we call it. And they bring oranges and bananas. And the first thing that they do, even before you talk, before even business is done. I've been places where I'm buying something. And before you buy something, they sit you down and they get you have to drink coffee with them. And some of that Middle Eastern oil, not coffee, it's so thick, But this is typical Middle Eastern hospitality from those days. And in verse 6, Abraham hastened to the tent to find Sarah. Knead 3 bushels of flour and make loaves. Then running to the cattle, Abraham took a fine and tender calf and gave it to his servant, who hurried to prepare it. Then taking cream, milk, and the calf he had prepared, he laid them before them, while he remained standing by them by the tree. Now look at this. It takes time to get a calf and kill it, right? It takes time. It's not something that is just done. They can't go just to a refrigerator. And they had to get the calf. They had to slaughter it. They had to quarter it. And all of a sudden, this takes time. And while the guests are just there sitting, they're just refreshing themselves with water and just taking their time. Nothing is said. And then Abraham puts the food before him. And typical Middle Eastern hospitality, the host does not eat with the guests. The hosts do not eat with the guests. The guests eat by themselves, because what the thing is that they should have all that they want, and you eat the scraps. And notice it says that he was standing by the tree. Standing in Hebrew is the word eved, which is where we get the word servant. We get the word waiter from that. A person who's a waiter. A person who's a waiter, I don't know if any of you have ever waited on tables. When you wait on tables, what you have to do is you have a towel. You always have a towel on your hand. And that towel is always on your left hand. And what you do is you just wait and see what people need. And the most important thing of a waiter, have you ever been to a place and, the waiter or waitress is going around so busy, and all of a sudden your fork fell, or you need an extra napkin, and sometimes they never come back, especially if you paid at front. A waiter, no matter what he's doing, should always be looking around. A good waiter looks around, and if someone just drops their napkin, the waiter's supposed to see with the corner of his eye, go pick it up and do something. A waiter is someone who waits on someone, serves someone. That verse says, wait on Yahweh, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Wait on Yahweh. It doesn't mean, I'm waiting, Yahweh. How long? It's already been 2 minutes. It's been 5 hours. It's been 5 days. That's not, it just means wait on Yahweh. Wait on him. Serve him. Be serving him. Be available to him. And if you're serving him, if you're available to him, then he, because you are waiting on him, he will give you the desires of your heart. But we got to serve him. And that's what Abraham, our father, was doing here. He was waiting on Adoni, on my master, on his master, on the guest, on this person who he doesn't even know. He doesn't know he didn't know at this point that it was Yahweh. He didn't know that at this point it was Elohim. Think of it. He didn't know at this time that it was the creator of the world that he was waiting on. And by the way, to the creator of the world, he sets up, what does it say there? Take some cream. Now the word cream there is what we used to know as cuajada. Do you guys remember that word, cuajada? I remember when we were small, they used to make this, I don't know what you call it in English. Is it like a yogurt type thing? And they used to make this curds. I think some of your translations say, but they used to make this thing and we had to eat that in the morning, this cuajada. And that's what this word is. And taking milk and the calf. Notice that Abraham, our father, who is Torah observant, by the way. Abraham is Torah observant. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think that, well, wait a second, how could Abraham be Torah observant when the Torah wasn't even given? When the Torah wasn't even given. Well, wait a second. The Torah started on Genesis 1:1. And Adonai taught our father Adam and our fathers before the flood, Noah, and he taught everyone else, and he taught Abraham. And through Shem and to Abraham, he taught us his Torah. Abraham, as we're going to see, was Torah observant. Because the Torah is not just for Israel or the Jews. The Torah is for the whole world. The whole world needs to be following Torah. It is something that Adonai gave. For example, marriage. Adonai gave marriage at the beginning for all mankind. He gave the Sabbath for all mankind. Every person in the whole world should be observing Sabbath. Every person. Because the Sabbath is for the world. It's not a Jewish thing. It's a biblical world thing. And so what happened here is they prepared it and he just stayed there. And the visitor, who the master was, and you could tell in those days when a master would come, just like today, you have the boss coming with his two bodyguards, you know who the bodyguards are by their sunglasses, and their suit, and there's always a little bump right here, you know. And so here is the master with his two servants, and the master says, "Where is your wife Sarah?" "She is in the tent," he replied. Then his guest said, "I shall visit you again next year without fail, and your wife will have a son." Now this is a very important phrase here. I will visit you at this time next year. In 1 year from now. Abraham is 99 years old now. Sarah is 89. In 1 year, I will visit you. Why is this important? Because since Abraham was 75 years old, and now he's 99, Adonai has been telling him, "Lech lecha, arise yourself and go to a land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. I'm going to give you seed." He keeps telling him. Can you imagine 25 years of Adonai promising? I'm going to give you a son. I'm going to give you a son. I'm going to give you a son. But no son. In fact, they even lost hope. And Sarah said, well, he's going to give us a son. Well, maybe it's through my, my servant Hagar. Go to her, marry her, have a son by her. They have a son, Ishmael. Wait, that wasn't Adonai's plan. Adonai says, I'm going to give you and Sarah a son. Not just you, Abraham, through someone else. So they even got ahead of Adonai, like many of us always do. But Adonai says something very important here, because now he gives a time and a date. This time, next year, Sarah is going to conceive and have a son. Now, they were in the door of the tent, and the tree was right outside the tent door. And Sarah, what she was doing, now women usually don't do this, but what Sarah was doing is she was listening in. She was listening to the conversation between these three guests as they were eating, and the conversation they were having with Abraham. And when she probably heard, where's Sarah? She probably started looking around. This time next year, all of a sudden she hears that. And as she hears that, she laughs. And the reason she laughs is, wait a second, she's 89. 89 years old, past the time for motherhood. And she laughs to herself, thinking, now that I am, and the English here is not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says something that the Spanish would say. But in fact, in your Spanish Bible, it probably says the actual Spanish word that is translated from the English. But in the English, it says, now that I am past the age, of childbearing, and my husband is same word, viejo. He's an old man. Old man sounds good. He's a viejo. He's an old man. Is anything too wonderful for Yahweh? Is anything too great for Yahweh? No. Yahweh could do whatever he wants. How many of you believe that Adonai could do whatever he wants? You see, that's why I always say the most important verse in the Bible is Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. That's the most important verse in the whole Bible. Because if you believe that, then is anything too wonderful for him? No. If he's the creator, can he do anything? Yes, he can. Because that's his creation. By the way, if you don't believe Genesis 1:1, then you can't believe the rest of the Bible. Because if Elohim didn't create it, then every one of us were sons of monkeys. But is anything too wonderful for Yahweh? And of course, the answer is no. But Yahweh asked Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Am I really to have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too wonderful for Yahweh? At the same time next year, I shall visit you again, and Sarah will have a son. Not you, Abraham, have a son, but Sarah will have a son. And Sarah says, I didn't laugh. She lied. She said, I did not laugh. And Adonai says, oh yes, you did laugh. And so we have Sarah here saying a little white lie. A little white lie. Not to deceive, but out of fear. Because why do we lie? Usually out of what? Out of fear. She was afraid. It was pride, a little pride. Why do we lie many times? Because of pride. But she lied. I did not laugh. Oh, yes, you did laugh. Yahweh replies. And so all of a sudden, they decide to take off. In verse 16, from here the men set out and arrived within sight of Sodom, with Abraham accompanying them to show them the way. Between Beersheba and Sodom, you just go straight east, and there's the road through Arad, and then you go up. And again, depending if you believe that Sodom is the north or the south, he took them all the way to the site of Sodom. We believe that Sodom is in the north of the Dead Sea, right across from Jericho, in what is called the Kikar, the cities of the plain, the cities of the Kikar. And the Kikar is a round plain opposite of Jericho's on one side, and Sodom is on the other side. And we've been excavating that site for several years. In fact, I took my wife Sherry and my son Zach over there one year to the actual site that we were excavating of Sodom. And since then, there's been a lot of excavation found there at Sodom, which we'll talk in a moment. But what happens here is Abraham goes with them. And one of the things that in verse 18, Yahweh says, shall I conceal from Abraham what I am going to do, seeing that Abraham will become a great nation, with all the nations of the earth blessing themselves by him? Now think of it. This is found in Genesis 12, verse 3. All the mishpocha, all the families, all the nations of the earth will be blessed by Abraham. In other words, salvation will come through Abraham. This is one of the first places that the gospel is preached. Remember, Yeshua said to the Pharisees, Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw my day and was glad. And the Pharisee says, wait a second. You're a young man. You're only in your 30s. And you've seen Abraham? Before Abraham was, I am. The word I am there is the name Yahweh. So what Yeshua is saying, before Abraham existed, Yahweh. That's why Yeshua could say, I and the Father are echad. I and the Father are one. The oneness, the echadness of the Father and the Son. And over here on this, we see it exactly. The gospel was preached to Abraham when he said, when Adonai told him, all the mishpocha will be blessed by you. Because Adonai promised him a land, Israel, a seed, not Isaac, Messiah, and a blessing. And what is the blessing? The bracha. The bracha is salvation. That's why there's no salvation outside of Israel. That's why a Gentile who wants to be saved has to accept Yeshua the Messiah, and Yeshua the Messiah at salvation grafts him into the olive tree of Israel. There's no separate tree for Gentiles and one for Jews. The olive tree of Israel is for Jew and Gentile together, male and female together, rich or poor together. And I want you to get verse 19 and underline that, put that in yellow, put a giant star around that. Because watch what it says. For I have singled him out. I have chosen him. I have singled him out. Just like you have a bunch of horses there. And you single that one out. That is mine. I want that one. That is the white stallion. That is mine. Es mi caballo. I want it. Adonai singled our father Abraham. Now remember, our father Abraham was in Ur of the Chaldees. He was in what is later on Babylon to the south. He was living in this pagan culture. His father Terah was an idol worshiper. And amidst of all the idol worshipers, among his father and his brothers and everybody, Adonai says, that man, I don't know what Abraham had. There was something in Abraham that Adonai says, I like that, I want that. That is my man. And Adonai chooses him, says, get out of here. Get out of your family. Get out of your country. Get out. I'm going to show you a land. Eretz Israel. I'm going to give you a seed, Messiah, to save the world. And I'm going to use him to bless the whole world. Kol mishpocha, all the nations will be blessed by you. But I have singled him out to command, look at this, to command his sons and his household after him. And here's where we start looking at the responsibility of Abraham and his family, his sons, Isaac, Yaakov, Yehuda, Levi, all the sons, to every Hebrew today, every blood Hebrew today. I have commanded him and his sons and his household after him to maintain Chaderech Yahweh. To maintain what? Chaderech Yahweh. Chaderech Yahweh is the way of Yahweh. El camino de Yahweh. The road, the way of Yahweh. There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. But the way of Yahweh is the true way, the only way. And the way of Yahweh is what Abraham, his sons, his household, and everybody that's grafted in has to teach to the rest of the world. To maintain the way of Yahweh. Maintain it. Are you a maintainer of the way of Yahweh? Or are you just a hearer of his way? Because, you know, probably the great majority of people that are so-called believers do not maintain the way. They just have heard about the way. They might even believe about the way, but they don't maintain the way. How do you maintain the way? By just and upright living. In other words, we don't maintain the way in knowledge, but in life. Now, we are maintainers of the way. Are we perfect? I've never met one. I've never met one. Are we sinless? I've never met one. In fact, Abraham himself and Sarah, look at that. We just saw Sarah lie to Yahweh. Can you imagine lying to Yahweh? We lie to one another. But lying to Yahweh? Was she perfect? No, but may you be blessed like Sarah. May you receive the blessings. May all the daughters here receive the blessings of Sarah. And so it's important for us to know what the way of Yahweh is. And go with me to the book of Genesis. And go with me, and we're going to kind of go a little fast forward here for a second. Go with me to chapter 26. And this is a story of Isaac at Gerar. And we're going to see Abraham at Gerar. But here in 26, Adonai promises him a land, a seed, and the blessing. But watch what verse 5 says. 26:5. In return for Abraham's obedience. He was obedient, he obeyed. For he kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah. What? Look what it says, my Torah. Of course, in English, you'll say my law. But if you look at the Hebrew, my Torah, in other words, the word Torah doesn't mean law. It means the teachings, the ways. So the ways of Yahweh is his Torah, and Abraham was commanded to teach the way of Yahweh to his sons and his generations, which they are still doing, we are still doing. And that way is Abraham kept Yahweh's charge. He kept Yahweh's ways. He kept his commandments, and he kept his Torah. Of course, Adonai redeemed us from Egypt. Adonai redeemed us from Egypt by the blood of the Lamb, by grace through faith. And then he took us as a community, as a familia, he took us to Sinai. And in Sinai, he wrote them down for us. And he gave it to us in written form, which is your Torah today that you have. Every person, every Bible has the Torah. Someone says, how could I get a hold of a Torah? I said, do you have a Bible? Yes. Well, it's the first 5 books. I didn't know that were the first 5 books was the Torah. I thought it was something else. No, there is nothing else. There is no Mishnah. There is no Talmud. There's nothing else. All we have is the Torah. And Yeshua and Paul, where did they go to get their information from? From the only place there is, Torah. Well, let's go on here in back to Genesis. And so he says, shall I hide this? No. I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for their sin. What was the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah? By the way, Ezekiel 16, verse 49, says part of their guilt was they were an arrogant people. They were arrogant. They were careless. In fact, in the Kikar, in the cities of the plain, which is why Lot went over there, and there's a whole teaching on that. There was abundance of food. It was like the garden of Adonai, we are told. And they were so, gluttony was a big thing there. The things of the flesh, they could care less of the poor. They could care less of anybody else. They just fed themselves with everything. Every luxury, every pleasure was theirs. But the sin of Sodom was also the sin which today in our present world. This shows us how far away we are from Torah. It's called an alternative lifestyle. Yeah, today they call this an alternative. In other words, you could do this, but if you have an alternative lifestyle, you could do that too. You're welcome to do that. You're welcome to do that one over there, this one over here, those things there. You're welcome. It's up to you. It is not up to us. It's up to the Creator. And if you don't believe me, then I want you to go to your car. I want you to get the owner's manual and say, I disagree with this. Throw it away, burn it, do whatever they do to the Bible, the Constitution, and all these things. Throw it away and have done with it. And say, I am going to use alternative gas in my car. I'm going to get some kerosene and put it in for gasoline. Just alternative fuel, and see what happens. Boom. You can't go alternative from what your Maker tells you. And today the world is into this alternative lifestyle fashion. But the sin of Sodom was homosexuality, which later on, now think of this, there was no Torah yet written. There was no written Torah. There was no Exodus. There was no Leviticus. There was nothing there. But yet, Adonai said that this is a bad lifestyle. Just like, remember, when Noah got into the ark, there was no written statute that says this is clean food, this is unclean food, this is food, this is animals that you could sacrifice, these are animals that you could not sacrifice. You don't find that written down. But Adonai tells Noah, get 2 of each of the unclean and 7 pairs of the clean. How did Noah know? How did Cain and Abel, how did Abel know? It's not written before Abel. How did Abel know to come and bring a first fruit offering to Adonai? Because Adonai taught the Torah from the beginning to Adam. And it was passed on. And so these lifestyles were always bad. But they became normal in Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities of the plains, Zeboim. But what does Adonai say? Let's go to Genesis 19:5. Genesis 19:5. When they come here to Sodom, and we're going to go a little ahead of ourselves here. The men of Sodom called Lot and said to him, where are the men who come to stay with you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them. The word that we may know them is a Hebrew euphemism for intimacy among husband and wife. Every time it talks about intimacy between husband and wife, it uses the word, and Adam knew his wife and she conceived. So the men of Sodom want to know these 2 guests who are angels. And the third guest, of course, we said was Yahweh, the pre-incarnate Yeshua, the pre-incarnate Messiah. And they wanted to be intimate with these people, with these 2 angels. They didn't know they were angels. They thought they were just like regular men. But the men of Sodom wanted to, and that is an abomination. Watch what it says in Judges 19:22 also. The men of the city followers of Belial, the demon, beset the house around, and they said, bring forth the man who has come into your house that we may know him. Another group of sons of Belial and Belial, a Baal, a master, a false god. And these followers of his religion were homosexuals. And they wanted to know the man that had come into his house. Leviticus 18:22. When it is written down, when this abomination is written down, it says what? You shall not lay with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. I want all young people to know. It is an abomination. It's not only a sin, but it's a gross sin. It is gross. And what's interesting is that these lifestyles are being passed on even to the little children today, even in school. They're being taught on TV. In fact, the Disney Channel is introducing their first homosexual boy. Of course, they say gay, but there's nothing gay about that lifestyle. Their first homosexual boy they're introducing into the Disney Channel stories. Leviticus 20, verse 13. Leviticus 20, verse 13. If a man also lay with mankind as he lays with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. So think of it. To Adonai, the homosexual lifestyle demands the death penalty. Demands the death penalty. And of course, in the times when we had a king, we had a high priest, that was what was done. We're living in exile now. We don't have a temple, we don't have a king, and we don't do that. But in the millennium, when the millennium comes, let me tell you, the Torah is going to be the constitution of the world. And the whole world is going to follow Torah during the 1,000-year millennium, and that lifestyle is not going to be tolerated. Go with me to to Romans 1. Go with me to Romans 1. And let me get my New Covenant scriptures. Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. Interesting. The two Bibles that I have there don't have Romans. I've worn them so bad. Chapter 1. verse 18. And my little machine just beat, so we will close with this. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. For the wrath of Elohim is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about Elohim is plain to them, because Elohim made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, Elohim's invisible qualities, his power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood by what was made, so that people without excuse. In the beginning they knew Elohim, but they neither glorified him as Elohim nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they were really fools. And they exchanged the glory of the immortal Elohim for images made to look like a mortal human and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore Elohim gave them over to their sinful desires in their hearts, to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their own bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of Elohim for a lie, and worship and serve creatures rather than the Creator, who's forever blessed. Amen. Because of this, Elohim gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural intimacy for unnatural ones. And in the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another, men committing shameful acts with other men, and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Here in Romans chapter 1, from verse 18 to where I just read there, is history of the world from the creation. And in creation, they knew Elohim. Think of this. Cain and Abel knew Elohim. Shem knew Elohim. Noah, Nimrod, all these people knew Elohim. But they refused to follow him. And you know what happens when you refuse to follow him? If you walk away from Adonai, he'll walk away from you. And you walk away from him, he'll walk away from you. And you walk away from him, and he'll walk away from you. By the way, this is a freebie. You walk one step towards him, he'll run towards you. But they knew Elohim. They were there. They knew Elohim. But they walked away from him and started serving creatures and becoming philosophers and all that kind of stuff. So Adonai says, oh, you want to get away from me? Go away. And when they went away, they got involved in all kinds of deviant behavior. And because of that, Adonai walked away from them. He abandoned them. And then they got involved in this. And after that comes judgment. A homosexual nation is a nation ready to be judged by Adonai. 1 Corinthians, I'm just going to give you these. 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim? Be not deceived. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor the effeminate. The Greek word for effeminate is malakos, which means soft one. And the soft one, the effeminates, I think some of your translations have catamites, right? Catamite. What's a catamite? A lot of people say, what's a catamite? A catamite is an effeminate man. In fact, we are raising generations of effeminate men. And manhood and womanhood, true biblical manhood and womanhood, are being discarded today. But Adonai says they will not inherit the kingdom of Elohim. nor abusers of themselves with mankind, which is a sodomite. The Greek word is aserdokis, someone who abuses himself with mankind, an abuser, nor thieves, and other people too. But Adonai bunches all these people together. And it's not just them, but it's anyone else. 1 Timothy 1:8-10. Of course, people that defile themselves with mankind. And this is not just doing the actions, but remember what Yeshua said. Adultery is not just committing adultery physically, but adultery if you lust with your eye. So we need to start teaching the whole generation of not lusting, women lusting after other women or men lusting after other men. That is as doing it. The pornography, looking at it, all these things. Today we have same gender marriages. You know what? There's no such thing as a same gender marriage. It is impossible for two women or two men to get married. Oh, they could have a ceremony. They could even have a preacher says, "I bless, God bless you." They could pleasure one another. They could do all kinds of things. They could love one another. They could do all things, but they can't get married. Because marriage is something that could only occur between a male and a female. A marriage cannot occur. And yet today, they're flaunting these things. Transgender lifestyles. A transgender lifestyle is an abomination to Adonai. In fact, Adonai even says a man should not dress like a woman and a woman should not dress like a man. We need to start now teaching our kids and other alternative lifestyles that are out there. By the way, I wrote this, and I want everybody to make sure, and I'm going to read it so that nobody, and so it could be, that we are not to be prejudiced or discriminate against anyone of that lifestyle. Watch what I wrote. There is nothing in the Bible saying avoid business dealings with a gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender person. Neither is there anything advocating or authorizing violence, hatred, job discrimination, legal discrimination, bullying, or taunting against them. Okay, so that's one of the most important things that we need to do. One of the things is we need to understand what Adonai is calling us. But I want you to go to, I'm sorry, but we need to go to Romans again. Go with me to Romans chapter 5. Romans 5. And here in Romans 5, we are taught something very important. And it's about a gentleman in the congregation who was living in immorality. He was actually committing incest. And Paul tells the church at Corinth that he has to be excommunicated. Excommunicate him. But watch what it says here. In excuse me, 1 Corinthians 5. I'm still in Romans. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Okay. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and let's start reading with verse 11, or verse 9. I wrote you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Not at all meaning all the people of this world who are immoral or greedy or swindlers or adulterers. In that case, you would have to leave the world. I am writing to you that you must not associate with anyone who claims to be a brother or a sister who is sexually immoral or greedy or idolater or slanderer or drunkard or swindler. Do not even eat a meal with such a person. What business is it of mine to judge the world and those outside the church? Are you not to judge those that are inside, though? Elohim will judge those outside. Expel the wicked person from among you. Now, this verse really brings that idea that if they are people of the world, you leave them alone. Leave them alone. That's none of our business. The only business we have is those that are in these four walls. And the main business we have is this guy right here. Each and every one of us. Of those that are outside, Adonai is going to judge. So we should never discriminate or come against anybody, because remember, whether we like it or not, Adonai loves the whole world. Adonai loves them. And we need to show love and compassion to them. We don't know why people are that way. But you know what? It's a lifestyle that Adonai says that's an abomination. Now, we cannot point the finger. We cannot judge them. Definitely never bully them. Definitely never teach your kids never to bully anyone. Never to come against or laugh at anyone because of the way they look or act or whatever. But among us, judgment begins at the house of Elohim. So we must look at ourselves first. Not just in this area, but in every area. Thieves, it talks about thieves. It talks about all kinds of different things. And at this point, we'll let the law handle anyone. In fact, another thing that I wrote was, watch, and again, I want this, law enforcement officials and the courts have legitimate right and duty to take legal action against those sexual offenders, homosexual or heterosexual, who use coercion or violence or prey on children, the disabled, elderly, and other peoples. And you know what? In this congregation, if we do find out that there are predators, and let me tell you, every congregation has predators because they want to hit the vulnerable. So one thing we always tell people is take care. When our kids were small, we took care of them. Take care of your kids. Because remember, this is volunteer. Whoever's here is volunteer. I don't ask people for a check. I don't do checks on people. And so every one of you is volunteer. We're all trusting one another. But remember what kind of world we live in today. But if anything will be heard that something has been done, and we've done this, we've called the police. And we've had the police come and say to this person, you know what? You're coming with us. And every congregation should always be aware. So let's be balanced. Let's not just be haters. You know, I hate that thing, especially on TV. You know, the old, cowboy movies, or where they always have a preacher and he's always, real mean against these people. We should never be. We should be the most loving people there is. Well, there was 9 points, and I think we only got on 2 points of our 9 points for today. But let's stand. Father, we thank you for today. We pray that mighty work, and we pray, Father, that little by little we would be able to learn Even those things that are hard, Father. This generation, Father, my heart goes out for the young people of this generation because of all the attacks of Hasatan against them. And in this area, Father, I pray that as the little ones hear this, that they might ask their parents, what did he mean by that? What did he mean by that? And that the parents, Father, would be able to teach the children the right things. And Father, give us wisdom how to deal with, especially in school, Father. Father, I just heard that at one of the elementary schools that I went to, Father, that the teacher was saying, if whatever bathroom, this is elementary, fourth grade, whatever bathroom you want to go to, if you think you're a boy, wait a second, Father, that should not be taught in fourth grade. Second grade, yeah, it was. In the name of Yeshua, Father, do a mighty work. Amen and amen. Yeverechecha Yahweh vayishmerecha. A'ir Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panav elecha vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. And we'll have